Alright guys, welcome in. This is going to be my Rams Seahawks preview video. Before we get into it, be sure to subscribe, comment, and like if you enjoy this video. Alright, let's get into it. We're going to start right off the bat, as usual, with the lineups for the Seattle Seahawks coming in. You're probably watching this on a Thursday. It took a while to get the preview out. I had some issues, plus I had to wait with the injury report, how things would go down. Now we finally know a little bit more. So here are the projected lineups and key position players to keep in mind. You have, of course, quarterback Russell Wilson. You have running back Alex Collins. We'll get into that in a sec. Running back Chris Carson, which I don't think he's going to play. We'll also get into that in a sec. You have wide receiver DK Metcalf, wide receiver Tyler Lockett, as well as Freddie Swain. D. Eskridge is not available. We'll get into that again in a sec. Will Dissly, Colby Parkinson, and potentially Gerald Everett at the tight end spot. And then from left to right, you have left tackle Dwayne Brown, left guard Damian Lewis, center you have Kyle Fuller, at right guard you have Gabe Jackson, at right tackle you're likely going to see Brandon Shell, who is expected to play. If not, it is Cedric Abui. So that is the offense. The defense, from top to bottom, we have the defensive tackle Poona Ford, Al Woods, and Brian Moan. The defensive ends, Kerry Hyder and LJ Collier. The outside linebackers, Rasheem Green, Benson Mayowa is a questionable decision, so we will see if he is available. Darrell Taylor and Alton Robinson. At inside backer, you have Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks. At corner, Sidney Jones, DJ Reed, and Trey Flowers. At free safety, you have Quandre Diggs, Ugo Amadi, and Marquise Blair. And at strong safety, Jamal Adams and Ryan Neal. So those are your lineups for the Seattle Seahawks. Moving on to the injury report, Brandon Shell was going to try to play this week. It looks like he's going to go, depending on if they decide to bench him and keep Abui. I don't know why they would. Abui was terrible last week, and that's just kind of putting it lightly. Then you have D. Eskridge, who is out due to a concussion. You have, in all honesty, he could still play, but I don't think he'd be very effective. Chris Carson, who is a phenomenal back, he's been dealing with a chronic neck injury his whole career, which they've kind of leaked, and now all of a sudden he's starting to feel some effects with that neck. So he has a pinched nerve in his neck. He's going to be hard for him to go. So I'm going to say in all likelihood he's ruled out. But if he's not, then I think he's going to be behind Alex Collins on the depth chart, at least for this game. On top of that, you do have Darrell Taylor, who didn't practice. He's likely going to go, as well as Gerald Everett coming off the COVID IR. Potentially, he still needs to get a positive, or rather a negative PCR COVID test and deliver that to the league. He did already have a negative. He had, I believe, 2 or 3 Delta negatives. But it has to be a PCR, I believe, is the term for the NFL in order for him to be able to play. So I believe he will end up playing. Aside from that, Benson Mayowa, of course, is a questionable decision there. We'll see if he ends up playing or not. Moving on to the Rams, you had Henderson, Rapp, Higbee, and Munt, who were limited this week. They are all expected to play, and we'll dive right into the key matchups. So starting off with key matchups here, we do have the cornerback wide receiver matchup that I think a lot of people are very interested in. And no, it's not Jalen Ramsey and DK Metcalf. It's actually the other one, Darius Williams versus Tyler Lockett. There was a little bit of a scare after Lindsey Theory accidentally tweeted out that David Long would be on Tyler Lockett. I think a lot of people were worried about that, and I think a lot of people went in their DFS lineup and they put Tyler Lockett as the MVP if they're doing the single game showdown, and for good reason. David Long has been a little bit of a liability for the Rams on the defense, and putting him against Tyler Lockett, who's a model of consistency, unbelievable, field awareness, and just everything that he's able to do is just a mismatch, from hell, so to speak. So you're going to see Darius Williams in all likelihood on Tyler Lockett. That is a huge matchup. We will see how that works. In addition, Dwayne Brown versus Terrell Lewis / Ogbonna Okoronkwo. Those two didn't have their best game last week, putting it lightly. To be honest with you, I thought Terrell Lewis played better than Okoronkwo. They both struggled to set the edge and stop the run. Going up against Dwayne Brown is going to be a very tough task. Once again, you're going up against a very good left tackle. I said last week DJ Humphries is legit, and this week they're going up against Dwayne Brown, who's also very, very good at that position. They come in at my second matchup to watch in this key matchup series. And lastly here, but not least, we have Kyle Fuller and Damian Lewis versus Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald, in all likelihood, is going to get that sack that he needs to break that record for the Rams, but it hasn't happened in a few weeks. And so now people are waiting for Aaron Donald to get those sacks. He's come close to getting 4 sacks, and he comes up with nothing. So we'll see this game, but I do think he's going to get, in there and make some sacks, generate some of those. And I do think he's going to have a field day against Kyle Fuller and Damian Lewis. Although I will say Damian Lewis has gotten a lot better as a pass protector. He's really good against the run. He's gotten better in pass pro. I do feel like Kyle Fuller is a huge mismatch, but we will see. He's got a tough test against Aaron Donald. Moving on to the 5 players on each side you want to watch. We're going to start off with the Seahawks. Number 1, it is Alex Collins, the running back, who has bounced around this league a little bit with the Seahawks and the Ravens. This is a guy that is all of a sudden the next man up. And, even though they drafted Rashad Penny in the first round, even though that they've drafted guys like Travis Homer and DJ Dallas, he is the next man up after Chris Carson. So he is a guy to watch. He had a pretty good week last week against the Niners. We'll see if he continues that. Moving on, you have defensive tackle Poona Ford, who I mentioned earlier, out of Texas. This is a very underrated player. He's smaller and he went undrafted because he was 5'11", but he is a very, very talented player in the interior. He's likely going to play the majority of the game, so definitely watch out for Poona Ford in the trenches. Moving on, tight end Gerald Everett. Obviously, if he plays, he's going up against his former team. We always love those revenge games. We love storylines. Well, this is one, and this is an opportunity because Shane Waldron also is the offensive coordinator who is playing against Sean McVay, who he coached under, and they're going to be running that similar style offense. So that's definitely somebody to keep in mind. Gerald Everett coming back from COVID. I bet you anything he wants to play this game more than anything and show them that they should have brought him back, or whatever you want to call it. But there's no doubt in my mind that he could have a very good game if they give him the opportunity to. Number 4, we have Freddie Swain, the wide receiver, because Dwayne Eskridge is out. That does, once again, like last week when, Swain caught a touchdown, it puts Swain in another opportunity. Although this week, if the Rams don't get rid of the bend don't break, there's going to be a lot of yards to be had. So I think Swain is going to be the beneficiary of that. And I do think Swain in the slot is somebody to watch out for. He's definitely a speedy guy out of Florida. He's caught 2 touchdowns in the last 4 games. And, he's somebody that just you have to keep in mind in the red zone. You're thinking they're going to go to Metcalf or an Everett or a Will Dissly or a Lockett, and then all of a sudden they throw it over to Swain, who ends up being open. If David Long is covering him, you're going to have to watch Swain. He could be a problem in this game. And number 5 here, Ryan Neal, the defensive back. Really, their dime backer, can fly all over the field. He's like, a safety mixed with a linebacker type of persona. And this is somebody that, they have no problem blitzing. They have no problem with him going sideline to sideline. Very impressive out of Southern Illinois. And he's got my attention, especially after last week. The performance he had against the Niners was definitely very impressive, and he is on my radar because of it. Moving on, we have the Rams top 5 here. Darrell Henderson comes in at 1. Obviously, the running back that just is coming off, potentially would have been his best game of his career if they let him keep running. He's going up against one of the worst run defenses in all of football, once again, with Seattle. I do think his ability in the passing game and, just everything he's able to do there, as well as his pass protection, and, of course, not to mention, what he can do as a runner. There's a chance that he could really blow up in this game. So Darrell Henderson is a name to watch in this one. Moving on, we have Aaron Donald, the defensive tackle, of course, the best player in all of football. We're waiting for him to get some sacks and get his big breakout game. He loves throwing Russell Wilson about 5 yards downfield and ragdolling him. I expect him to have some sort of sack like that in this one. I think he'll have a lot of success. Now, as great as Russell Wilson is, he is not Kyler Murray. He is not that, elite level speed that you just really can't catch up to. You can catch up to Russell Wilson. The Rams have had success against him. So I do think Aaron Donald is a player to watch. Of course, he always is, but I wanted to highlight him this week because I haven't highlighted him at all this season. And I know he's dying to get that sack to push him all time as the leader in Rams history in sacks. Moving on to number 3 here is Tyler Higbee, the tight end. He's had success against Seattle. I think this is somebody that, again, he's tied in targets with Van Jefferson. He is getting an opportunity and he's made the most of it. There have been times where, yes, he had the drop last week. That was, somewhat crucial. But all in all, I think he's having a pretty solid season. He just hasn't been utilized enough. This might be a game where they might want to utilize him against a really shoddy secondary. I have Tyler Higbee at 3. Number 4, Robert Woods. We're sticking with the offense. I think this is going to be Robert Woods' breakout game. If you're in fantasy and you're releasing him, shame on you. Do not be doing that because he will make you pay for that. Robert Woods is legit. Robert Woods has plenty of targets. He has the second most on the team. I'm not worried about Robert Woods. He's getting open. You could make the argument that the Rams are really designing plays using Woods to help spring Kupp open. If that's the case, fine. But I don't expect that to be the case the whole way through the rest of the season. And I definitely don't think Matthew Stafford is afraid to throw to Robert Woods, who is an incredible receiver, and I think he's going to have a huge game in this one, leading the Rams in receiving, like I was going to mention in the upcoming segment. So Robert Woods at 4. Number 5 is Taylor Rapp. This guy has been getting so much scrutiny, and a lot of it is because Terrell Burgess has only played 1 snap. I love Terrell Burgess as much as anyone. He's been on our show. He is a great guy, and he's been on our show twice, I might add. Here's the thing. Terrell Burgess and Taylor Rapp do not play the same role at all. Terrell Burgess has been working with the corners in practice and what have you. He is a nickel and he has the ability to play free safety. But as far as what Taylor Rapp is entitled to do, as far as what they ask him to do and operating around the line of scrimmage and coming up and making a big play and making a big hit and coming up and just being comfortable in that role in the box, that is not what Burgess does. Burgess, if anything, would be replacing David Long. So in my opinion, I think he's been unfairly treated. I think he's been scrutinized by, a lot of people. With all due respect, I don't think they've watched the All-22. They haven't seen what he can do. I know the stats don't look very good, but this guy also hasn't allowed a touchdown in the red zone. He's being held to a ridiculously high standard. While I actually feel like he's outplaying Jordan Fuller, he is a player to watch in this one, especially with those tight ends. If he gets stuck on, a Gerald Everett or, a Colby Parkinson or Will Dissly, 3 good tight ends, he'll get an opportunity to really show what he can do. Obviously not the best cover guy, but I also think he'll be very reliable in coming up and trying to stop Russell Wilson from scrambling. So he is number 5 on that list. Lastly here, before we get into the fun facts, we have the prediction section. I have Matthew Stafford throwing for 3 touchdowns. I think this is a game where he can let it rip against a really poor secondary. So Matthew Stafford at 3 touchdowns. In addition to that, I have Darrell Henderson going for 120 total yards. That includes receiving and rushing. I do think that's very possible. I know he's on a little bit of a pitch count as far as the 15 carries last week and so forth, and I do expect them to limit his carries, but more so I expect him to get some opportunities out of the backfield as a pass catcher, especially against this team. And so I think because of his mismatch ability, I think he's going to get over 120 total yards in this one. I have the Rams sacking Russell Wilson 3 times or more in this one. I think the Rams are going to get after Russell Wilson just like they got after Kyler Murray. The pass rush really hasn't been that bad. The issue is that they have to finish. They've had a lot of sacks that just haven't come to fruition, and I do feel like this week it'll start to come back and they'll start to feel good. Keep in mind, it took Brandon Staley's defense a little bit to get into the rhythm, and they were a well-oiled machine by mid-season. The Rams have not gotten to that point yet, and keep in mind that Raheem Morris has been asked to coach in a role that simply he's never done before. He has only been a defensive coordinator twice, and furthermore, he hasn't ever run this type of scheme with these type of players. So it's something new for him. We will see as he adapts. He was on a good pace before last week. I do think last week has people throwing him under the bus, but I do feel like he's going to come back, and this team is going to have some success rushing the passer. That's why I have Russell Wilson being sacked 3+ times. In addition to that, I have Robert Woods leading the Rams in receiving. If I didn't already mention it earlier, I think that, teams are going to start to try to key in on Cooper Kupp, and maybe that's what Sean McVay wanted. Maybe you wanted to use Kupp as somewhat of a productive decoy and then, get everyone else involved. But either way, I do think teams are going to key in on him, and I think it's going to allow Stafford to be like, well, I'll just go to Van Jefferson or Robert Woods or Tyler Higbee. I mean, he's got plenty of weapons. But here's the thing. Robert Woods is a very, very good receiver and is almost always open. He does a great job of creating separation, and then of course what he can do after the catch is very impressive, as well as his ability to block and of course take carries. This is somebody that I'm not worried about in the slightest, and I do think he's going to lead this team in receiving this week. Van Jefferson led the team in receiving last week, and Deshaun Jackson led the team in receiving the week before. It's not crazy to assume that Robert Woods, coming off a interesting comment by Sean McVay saying they want to get him more involved. We saw the last time he said that about Deshaun Jackson. Jackson went over 100 yards. Wouldn't be surprised at all if Robert Woods goes over 100 yards in this one and leads the team in receiving. That is one of my final predictions here. And then lastly, the Rams win 33-23. Look, I'm going to just tell you right now, this has a chance to be a blowout. I'm not predicting a blowout. I'm predicting a 10-point win because of Russell Wilson, only because of Russell Wilson. This team from top to bottom, they have an offensive line that really can't protect their quarterback. They have two really good receivers. They have their top running back out, and then a defense that is one of the worst in the league at stopping the run and stopping the pass. I don't see why else this game would be close other than the fact they have Russell Wilson. It's pretty much just like a normal Seattle team, except last year you started to notice the defense was horrid coming into the season, and they shored up tackling and everything, and they got actually pretty good at the end of the season last year while the offense faltered, and that is exactly why they fell off. However, this year, the offense looks fine. It is the defense that is a huge mega liability, but because you have Russell Wilson, you'll stay in games. Still, the Rams are coming off a loss. Seattle's coming off a win. Hard-fought win, hard-fought loss. I still think the Rams are not going to lose two straight. Sean McVay is 15-5 coming off losses. I'm not worried in the slightest. I think when you look Thursday Night Football, yes, the Rams all-time are 7-9, but the Rams have had Seattle have had their number the last few times. Keep in mind that one game with Jared Goff getting hurt, they were in control of that game until that unnecessary forced interception. And on top of it, Jared Goff got hurt. I'm not worried about this team against Seattle. I do think they are the superior team. I have Seattle, as I mentioned, a 7-10 team coming in the season, whereas I have the Rams a 15-2 team. I think it was just a product of how good Arizona was, and we don't give them enough credit on that. And I do feel like the Rams are going to come out firing on all cylinders, and they're going to be a tough team here. 33-23 on Thursday Night Football. Moving on to the fun facts section. I know you guys are loving, or at least some of you leaving comments. Do I really appreciate that. The Rams are losing the all-time series right now to the Seattle Seahawks, 22-25, but they are 6-2 in their last 8 meetings. In addition to that, the Rams are undefeated against Seattle in the playoffs. They beat Seattle recently last season, of course, 30-20 in Seattle. They are 2-0. On top of that, Sean McVay, like I mentioned, is 15-5 coming off a loss. Aaron Donald only needs a half sack. Once again, I don't think I've said this enough. I have. I'm totally kidding. Aaron Donald still only needs a half sack to pass Leonard Little as the all-time sack leader in Rams history. The Rams are 7-9 in Thursday Night Football games, in case you didn't get that first time. The Rams' offensive line has only averaged a league low of 0.8 sacks allowed per game. So the offensive line is killing it, whereas Russell Wilson's Seahawks offensive line is the reason why he probably wants to get out of Seattle. He has averaged a sack of an average of 2.2 sacks per game, which is a lot. The Rams, by the way, are the least penalized team in the NFL at 3 a game and have been assisted and have been assessed the fewest penalty yards of any team in the league at 22.75. Moving on to that, the Rams have a plus 189 point differential under Sean McVay versus the NFC West. The Rams are third in scrimmage yards per game this season. Matthew Stafford is expected to pass Dan Marino for fourth most passing yards through 12 seasons in NFL history in this game. And to wrap it up here, of course, former Ram Gerald Everett plays for the Seattle Seahawks. That's not a shock. Carlos Dunlap and Andrew Whitworth shared a locker room in Cincinnati together through 2010 through 2016. And Van Jefferson will play against his former Ole Miss teammate, DK Metcalf, as well as his former Florida teammate, another one. He played against Marco Wilson last week. This time he'll play against Freddie Swain, who, of course, he was in the wide receiver room with this week. So that's going to do it once again. 33-23 Rams win. I have them going to 4-1 and heading to New York, where that's where I'll be. So thank you guys so much for tuning in on this video. You can follow me at JKBogan on Twitter. You could also subscribe and like and comment if you enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys soon. And you guys take care. I will have a pregame show and a postgame show later tonight. The pregame, of course, coming before the game. The postgame is right after the game. You guys enjoy the game, and I will talk to you guys soon. Later.